Welcome to Restaurant Catering Smarts, your go-to podcast for restaurateurs looking to better operate and grow their catering profit centers. With every episode, you can count on expert advice, innovative strategies, and tasty tips straight from industry leaders. Our purpose is to help your business thrive. So, let's dig in to another juicy episode.
Hello again, I'm Michael Attias, your host of Restaurant Catering Smarts, and today's guest is Jason Schultz, founder and CEO of Blue Ridge Payment Partners, because yes, we want to hear from one more credit card processing payment sales guy. No, the reason I brought Jason on, and this episode is sponsored by CaterZen. Everybody knows I own CaterZen. I'm not going to give an over plug. If you're interested in seeing what we've got, Jason and I are working on some cool stuff coming down the pike. It's CaterZen.com. What I want to talk about is less about payments and more about character and philosophy and how you live your life. And, you know, there's an old saying, I don't know if you've heard this story. Well, first of all, Jason, welcome.
Thanks. I appreciate you having me on. I'm excited.
Yeah, I appreciate us working together. I forgot to ask you, give me a number between 1 and 300.
8.
Of course you pick 8.
I have to go with it.
Let's see. Okay, complete this. We ask random questions to get to know you better.
Okay.
I have a feeling I already know what you're going to say. School for me was blank.
Boring.
Well, that's usually the ADD C students are the ones that have the A and B students working for them. So I get it. So there's a story, and I wrote about the guy who started Corky's. I don't know if you've heard the story about this guy, and he starts a business, and he can't make payroll. He's down to like $1,000, and he's got to come up with 50 grand. So he flies out to Vegas. He goes and bets it all. You know, he gets close, but he's down to nothing. Like, he doesn't have enough money to buy a pack of chewing gum. And he's going to the bathroom, and to add insult to injury, you got to put a quarter in the stall to get in. It's like, shit. So he sees the guy wash his hands and says, "Hey, buddy, I lost all my money. Can you give me a quarter?" He's telling this story to the Wall Street Journal about his success. He gives him a quarter, and right when he's going to go to put the quarter in to get in the door, a guy comes out of the stall, and he holds the door open for him. So he goes, uses the bathroom. He's got a quarter, goes back to the casino, puts the quarter in the slot machine, pulls it, gets $250,000. He's got enough money to make payroll. He's got enough money to turn his company around, goes public on the New York Stock Exchange. He's a billionaire, explaining the story. And so the reporter says, "Wouldn't you like to meet the guy who gave you the quarter and talk to him?" He goes, "No, I'd really like to thank the guy who opened the door for me."
Yep. It's a pretty cool story, though.
I don't know if you've ever heard that story before.
I've never heard that story, but that's I get the analogy, and it's a pretty cool story if you think about it.
So, you know, Jason, I'd say he was someplace between holding the door and giving me the quarter. It was probably about 3 years ago. I get a call from Jason, and he's prospecting whale hunting for a credit card processing business. And I'm not going to mention the chain. It's a big chain. And he uncovers a pain point that they have with catering software and credit card processing. So we spend a year giving him demos, talking about how he can save them money on processing and how, you know, we've got this great catering software. And they ended up becoming our biggest client. And unfortunately, he didn't get the credit card processing business because sometimes in life, your brother-in-law or somebody else gets. And obviously, the backstory is there was somebody that opened the door for them. So there's some loyalty there, and that does happen. But, you know, I did take care of Jason for the referral, and I've sent him more business, and he's helping us get into the payments space and do some cool things for our clients coming. But that's just sort of the heart of who Jason is. Even when we looked at upgrading payment systems, he was like, "Hey, I'll take care of you, and I think it's going to benefit both of us in the long run." And you see a lot of people who only look out for themselves in business, like, what's in it for me? I've lived by the philosophy 1 + 1 = 3. Where did you come up with that? You know, where'd you get your philosophy on this?
Man, you know, I've always, so I grew up My dad always was a big do it right the first time guy, right? And I played sports all my life. I played high school sports. I went to college, played college football, and it was that mindset of just do it right the first time, and don't cut corners. Like, I teach my kids, like, when we're working out and we're doing stuff for their sports, it's like, if you're running a 40-yard sprint, hit the line. Coming in 6 inches short doesn't make you any better, right? And so I think it's just been kind of like instilled in me my whole life. And I've always just had this mindset to just do what's right, let the cards fall. It'll all come back in the end, right? If let's say there's a deal and I may not make maximum amount of dollars on it, I don't care, right? It's about taking care of the person, because in turn, business is reciprocal, right? I've done business for people and helped them find solutions. It may not have made me anything, but it's come back to me 3 months, 6 months, 8 months down the road, where they open up a new business or they refer someone else to me, and it always comes back, right? And I kind of pride myself on that. And most people that do business with me and work with me, that's what they get, and that's what they know about me. And I was having this conversation with a buddy of mine the other day, because he was asking me about, like, marketing and leads and all this stuff, and I'm like, I don't spend a dollar on any of that stuff. All of my stuff is networking, it's referrals, it's clients that I already have, just connecting with people that they know because they trust me. And that's kind of where I stand 10 toes down in the business, is that I just keep to that model, and I won't break it for anybody.
I feel like I know every generation says the generation, coming up sucks. I'm sure my parents' generation thought that I sucked. And, back the World War II generation thought the same. But I really do think today's age, there's just, when I was a kid, there was hustle, right? I mean, you know, I'll call anybody a liar. This isn't admissible in court, but I used to steal Coke bottles out of people's backyards to go sell them to get the nickel or 10 cents to go to 7-Eleven and buy a Slurpee, right?
Yep.
You're selling cards, you're cutting grass, you're babysitting. There's a hustle, right?
Yep.
Where do you think that has gone to, where there's more of a softening of we're all in Montessori school and everybody's equal? What's gotten lost?
Yeah, I think the grit and the drive that we had in our generations of going out and figuring things out, right? Everything nowadays, to me, it's easy, right? These kids nowadays, they have their tablets, they have ChatGPT. I got kids in school, and their easiest thing in the world for them to do is just, oh, let's just ChatGPT and figure it out. I'm like, no, try to like figure it out your own. Like, don't just chat GPT how to do it, or don't Google search it, right? Like, learn. It's going to help you grow and be better as an individual. So I think I was the same as you, growing up as a kid. When it snowed in a city, I mean, that was, the snowflakes were falling, everyone's getting ready to go play. I just heard money. I was ready to go shovel. I was cleaning off driveways and steps for people. And that's the way that I did it. My kids, it's a little different. To get them to go out there and shovel snow, they think I'm putting them through hell and back. And it's like, guys, it's one driveway. I used to do 15 a day when it snowed when I was a kid.
Were your parents poor?
No, I won't. They're not poor, right? But we weren't like wealthy by any means. Like, my dad was a truck driver. He worked 16 to 18 hours a day driving a food service truck. So he delivered for restaurants all over the
So
country.
you were just working class. Is that a good?
Class people. My mom had a job. I went to school. My sister and I went to school in the city. We would go to our grandparents' house until they were done work, and they would scoop us up and then either go home or go to whatever baseball or soccer or sport we had going on. But both parents worked. And I mean, we were the traditional, right? We did our one vacation a year to the beach. Nothing really extravagant. Each parent had one basic vehicle. It wasn't like, dad didn't have like a sports car that he drove on the weekends. It was just simplistic stuff. We grew up in the city. So, I mean, it's, I'm from Baltimore, and it's, row home in downtown area. So,
Yeah, I would say the same. Everybody, my parents looked forward to the one vacation a year. We'd get in the car and drive to Florida. And I just think ever since I was a kid, I didn't like that. I never liked work. I worked smart, not hard. Like, I cut 2 yards and I made enough money to screw off all summer long. So I think that that's more my speed, is to travel and have fun and figure out how to fund that. But I think the challenge is when you have kids, and I'm guessing from what I can reverse engineer, you've done far better than your parents did. And there's that balance of I want my kids to have this grit, determination, and hard work, but I also don't want them to have to work super hard. Like, I want to give them things. I don't want them to have to go hustle a job so they can buy a pair of Nikes. I can afford to buy them a pair of Nikes. So there's that balance of, how do I give them, but not give them too much where they're entitled? And I think that's sort of the entrepreneur's dilemma.
Yep.
And you've got to be very, very mindful of that. I had my son sell Cutco before he went off to college. And you've never heard anybody cuss more than my son about those meetings and whatever. But he made $3,000, over $3,000, and I matched him dollar for dollar. And it was worth it just for the lessons you learn, basically calling people up and getting rejected. I made the same deal with my daughter. I don't think she lasted a week. I hate that for her. I understand it, but I hate it for her because it just builds something
Yeah.
that you don't have.
Yep. Yeah, I'm very similar, like with our kids. My wife's a nurse, so she works full time. I mean, I have my own company. I'm working all hours of the night, round the clock some days, but we also have the luxury of, I can check out when I need to go do something for the kids. So it's a good work-life balance. But when a client calls or something's breaking or there's a system down, then like I'm all in. I got to be there to fix things and get stuff taken care of, or at least triage it and help my clients out. But yeah, with the kids, I will say we do hold our kids to a higher standard. We make sure that they have all the resources and tools, but it's expected of them that they're going to go to school, they're going to work hard, they're going to get good grades. My oldest daughter is a sophomore getting ready to be a junior in high school, and she's like a 4.4 GPA. She's like top 7 in her class. And she does really, really well. And I actually have her working with me in my business. So I'm teaching her some things as far as like marketing and like social stuff. So I'm kind of bringing her in, and she's actually went out on her own, is doing some like online classes with this stuff because that's kind of what her focus is.
Oh, that's cool.
So I've been teaching her and bringing her along, but she also wants money. And it's always like, Dad, I need money for this. It's like, okay, well, cool. You're going to work for it. So I have a list that every month of different days that she has to go through. And like, there's certain things I make sure that she posts out there on social. There's things that I make her update on my trackers and stuff like that I keep. It takes some admin work off me, but it's really, I can do it. It's not a big deal. It's really about giving her a task to complete and make sure she holds herself to it before she just gets the handout. I mean, my wife and I are going to give her the money or buy her whatever she needs anyway, but for the most part, we want to kind of instill that upon her that you got to work for it. And the same thing goes with the other kids. I mean, they're not old enough yet to work, but it is required as far as school and sports and athletics. I mean, we pay a ton of money for travel sports. I mean, travel soccer is like,
dude, you should have been Jewish. Our kids can't fucking play anything.
Yeah.
I didn't have to go anywhere on the weekends.
I mean,
I know these parents that are in travel sports. Like, I know a woman in Kentucky, and her kids are like baller baseball players, and she's talking about, $800 for a bat. I'm like,
yeah. Well,
it's a commitment, but I do think, there is a certain level of excellence and discipline you get in sports that I didn't get growing up. But again, I'm not complaining for what I do and don't have. I've designed my life to fit myself, but I see what you do with your kids. They're all, ballers, into sports. Big Tuna, who's my favorite, is
it's everybody's favorite is Big Tuna.
Do you have a picture you can flash on the screen of Big Tuna
Yeah, I'll pull it
on
up
your
here.
phone? So this kid is like baby Gronk on steroids. He goes to the Washington hockey game. He's got his Mr. T starter set. Yep, he's got his Mr. T starter set. He's always styling and profiling. He's the kid my kid hated in soccer. I signed my kid up for soccer. They're 5 years old, right?
Right.
My son is an Australian sheepdog. wherever the ball is, he's on the outside of the scrum trying to like herd everybody towards the ball. He will not get in the middle. And there's that one kid who's about 6 inches taller, looks like who's the guy in one of the Rocky films, the big, tall, blonde guy,
The
Russian.
Russian, Drago. Yeah.
Yeah, he looks like that. He's like fucking 5 years old. He's got a 8 pack as a 5-year-old, and every time he runs down the field, like give him the ball, boom, he goes through every kid
Yep.
scores. That's your son.
Here's a good one. That's his hockey one from this past weekend. So
Yeah, he's a little baller.
he played they had an inter squad scrimmage on Saturday, and he's still too young to get into the travel aspects of ice hockey, but he's been doing it now for 7 months, I think it is. And he scored 13 goals in their inter squad scrimmage, and they finally had to just like give him a timeout. They're like, all right, buddy, like go chill for a minute. And he's like,
Let
he's on
somebody
the
help.
ice looking at me going, what did I do wrong? And I'm like, just keep playing hard, bud.
Yeah, it's
He has the
crazy.
grit though, but he has it. Like he's that kid where, like today, for example, he got up, no one else is out of bed. He came downstairs, literally throws two of those breakfast corn dogs in the microwave, makes himself some, and he goes out in the basement and he's got his rollerblades on, he's got his stick, and he's literally like dribbling and shooting pucks for like an hour. And no one's even up yet, just him. And we don't have to tell him, he just does it. So he's got that. And it's
Yeah, I can see your son being a Chihuahua. He is going to get into some fights that he might not should win, but will probably win through pure grit and
yeah.
determination. So he's a character. But the one thing I admire is, you either won the lottery, which I know you didn't, but you make time for your family. And when my kids were growing up, there's a lot of things I could have done better as a dad. I think we can all look back and say we could have done better. But I always made it a point to be at their school, go on field trips, whatever I could do, and make myself available. Even, after I got divorced, my ex-wife had to work. I would take them to the doctor's appointments if they got sick and take off work. There's something when you're an entrepreneur, people think you can just not work when you want to, which is interesting. But I don't. Where did that come from? And how do you make time with that? I mean, you work your ass off. Your wife works her ass off. How do you make it happen?
I mean, it's definitely a challenge because the schedules are crazy. But I think it goes back to like my upbringing. My dad was a truck driver. He got up at 3 a.m., went to work every day, 15, 16-hour days. But you know what? He never missed a baseball game. There was times where I'll never forget it. Like he would drive down the street where we played at, and I would see his 18-wheeler. He would park it. He'd get out, come to my game, coach me, go get back in the truck and take it back to the yard before he even came home. And it's, 7, 8 o'clock at night before we're done playing. He's not home till 9 or 10, bed, back to work at 3 a.m. So I grew up like that. My mom was the same way. She made every single thing. My grandparents were there for every single thing. We grew up in the city, so everything was tight. Like we were all like 5 blocks away.
Yeah.
So for me, part of the reason why I really wanted to move into this entrepreneur space and have my own company is I want to be present. I think it matters for our kids. I think it matters, for their development. And two, I think them knowing that I always have their back no matter what and being there in their corner, it gives them something different than what other kids whose parents unfortunately can't do that, right?
Yeah.
They know that I'm going to be there, but they also know that I'm watching. And I will say this, like my girls, they come off the soccer field and no matter what happens, they always look at me to see what my face looks like. And if I have that like stern look, they're like, oh, I must have did something wrong. And sometimes I just have that look and I got to tell them like, you guys played great. It's all good. But they know like, I played sports, so for me, I'm very competitive, and it's like I don't care if you win, you lose, you score a goal, doesn't matter. I just want effort, right?
Yeah.
It's all about the effort, and I try to. That's why I want to be present because I want to try to instill that. I'm a big firm believer that nothing's free in this world, and we push that with our kids. Like if you want it, you got to work for it.
Yeah, I think that, if I look back, my dad went bankrupt when I was 10, 11. He cooked donuts in the middle of the night to put food on the table. I mean, not for long, but you do what you got to do. And I think, and I'm learning this in my personal life as well, I really don't give a shit what people say to me. It's how you show up. Because you can tell me as a vendor, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. I need to see it in action, right? And
Right.
it's human. it's whether it's a friend, whether it's your partner, whether it's a business partner, whether it's employees. Like, I don't want lip service. Just show me, right? Because that speaks louder. And my parents came from Morocco, so number one, they didn't speak English as well as others. They didn't grow up in this culture, so it's a different culture. And I didn't have that father that knows best. My dad's going to put his arm around me and say, "Oh, well, son, here's a lesson to learn." I mean, my dad worked his ass off. But the way my parents worked and they lived their life and they gave back and they did for the community and others and the sacrifices they made, how do you put a price tag on it? It's really your kids. It's almost like you hear these parents that are like, "Oh, don't go smoking pot, don't go." And then the kids find, fucking 3 ounces in the father's, sock drawer.
Right.
And then they wonder why their kids are smoking pot because you're fucking smoking pot. You know what I mean? Like, kids do pay attention. They see everything. They know way more than we give them credit for.
Yep.
And
I think that's part of it too, right? Like, like right now, no one sees it, right? They always see the social media posts of, me and the kids at the Caps game, or, me and the wife at, in Nashville and on a trip, but they don't see that, I'm up at 5 every day. I'm at the gym. I'm working all day long. I may step away to go like pick the kids, run them to soccer, whatnot. But when I come back, I'm usually on my computer. I'm usually in my office at my house till 8, 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night, because there's things that I've got to take care of. There's things that are being done. My kids see that, and they see the work ethic, but they also see me step away and be present for them. So that's what makes it matter for me, is that they see the ethic, they see what I'm putting in, and they know, they see what I'm doing, because, we're progressing in life. Obviously this travel soccer is just crazy expensive, but, they appreciate it, because there are times where they will come to me and they'll be like, "Dad, thank you." And it's just out of the blue. Like, I don't say nothing to them. They'll just come to me and say, "I know you're working hard. Thank you for all you do for us." And that's that boost you need as a man to be like, "All right, I'm doing it right. Let's just keep it moving."
Yeah, well, just keep in mind, as we're recording this, Father's Day is this coming up Sunday, and you'll end up screwed on what you're getting compared to what your wife probably got for Mother's Day. So let's put it in perspective. But, what's funny is when I had my restaurant, one of the reasons I pushed catering, and this is called Restaurant Catering Smarts, is because I knew I could make double the profits out of the same 4 walls. And that allowed me to have an operating partner and have a quality of life when I had my restaurant, and not be a slave. Because you don't get any more money at the bank if you worked hard for it.
Right.
So it's very interesting. Okay, let's talk about credit card processing. I'm going to tell you about my frustrations, and maybe you have an answer. I have a lot of frustrations.
Okay.
So, I put buying credit card processing, used car, food, from a food distributor. Like, you don't even know what the fuck's going on. Like, it's like there's a secret society kind of thing. Oh, it's interchange plus this, and give me your credit card statement, I'll save you money. And I feel like every time I went down that road, you wake up one day and all of a sudden you're paying way more than you contracted for. I'm sure I'm not the only guy who's gone through that. One, how do you know you're dealing with a reputable person? And how do you keep track of that so you don't wake up one day and now you're paying half a point more on processing from where you started off?
Yeah, I mean, great question. I think, a lot of it has to do with the person or the company that you go with. When you look at the big banks, the big processing entities out there, you're a small fish in a huge pond, man, especially if you're not doing, a couple $1 million a month. So what happens is that you sign up, you get your interchange plus rate, and then over time, they track all that stuff. They look at the account, they see what the profitability mix looks like, and then, anytime one of the card brands, let's like MasterCard, for example, they'll raise their rate on one card and it's like 0.001. It's nothing. Like, no one will even notice it. Well, then the processors can jump in and say, "Oh, well, we're doing a 10 basis point increase because everyone else is raising their rate. We got to adjust ours," which is, it's BS, right? And, they send it out in the statement. They kind of do the whole CYA, cover their ass, and no one says anything about
No
it.
one opens up their damn statement and reads the fifth page in the bottom in
Correct.
6-point type.
Yep. So like, what I do, and there's other, guys like me. I'm not the only one, but there's other people that we value the business and we value the relationships we have more than like gaining the next client, right? So like when I worked for the big companies and worked for the big banks, it was it baffled my mind how they were so like sales driven all the time. Like we got to sign the next deal, and that's all they focused on. But meanwhile, as they're signing 100 deals, there's 75 of them walking out the back door because they were switching or getting poached because of the rates. And I was sitting there scratching my head saying, wouldn't it make better sense just to like figure out how to give them a fair rate, keep them on the books, and as you grow, the numbers just continue to compile. So like in my business,
Churn is expensive in
yes,
any
it's
business.
extremely expensive. I mean, on all that. And, so like when I sign someone up, we sit down, we look at everything, and I usually try to give everyone options. I'm in a good place in life where, like I said earlier, I don't market things like it's all word of mouth, it's all referrals. So I don't chase people. Like if someone says, "Hey, I'm interested," okay, great. I'll sit down, we'll look at their stuff, I'll give them like a full scope, and I'll usually try to put together like 2 to 3 options and say, "Hey, here's what you're looking at. This is what it's going to cost. You tell me, like, what do you think?" And then I generally let them choose, or we'll negotiate each path and figure it out. And then for me, like I monitor it. So what I do is every quarter I pull the files, I look at everything, I make sure the rates are what they sign with. I look for any type of announcements that come out to see if there's any alerts saying they're going to raise rates. And look, I've knock on wood to this day, I've not had to do that to any of my clients, and I don't plan on it. But if there's an account that's just not profitable or they're not making anything, then it might be time that we have to do something. But that's not my goal, right? My goal is to continue to grow and continue to expand and not have to worry about the bottom falling out. So the one thing I will say, and I do, when someone says to me, "What makes you different?" I pride myself on the fact that in the last 3 years since being in this independent space, I can tell you of 3 clients that have left me in 3 years.
That's
2 of those were consumed by other companies that I had no control over. They were bought in by the
yeah.
hospital and they merged, so I couldn't do anything because they were using software. One of them, they were impacted by a hurricane, the business closed, and it just wasn't worth their time and investment to reopen it. So I lost 3 clients that I had no control over. Other than that, knock on
Yeah,
wood,
I
I don't
wouldn't
lose
I
people.
wouldn't consider that lost,
Right.
honestly.
But on the books, it's 3, right? And for me, that tells the story because if you do right, you take care of people, you make sure that when they call, they need something, you're on top of it, you don't lose. And in my world, if I don't lose anybody, then the income and the revenue that's coming in stays the same. Anybody I knew just continues to grow me. It's
Yeah,
not the rat race where the banks have it, where you're trying to sign 1,000 accounts, but you're losing 700 a month, so you're only growing
right.
3. And to me, it's a crazy concept, but for me, I want to keep the business I have and the partners I have to stay with me.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And that applies to every business, especially catering. A catering client's worth a lot more than a dining room client, generally speaking. And it's like sometimes people are short-sighted. There's been times where literally I bit the order and I bit another order. So basically 2 orders for free. But it led to more business and referrals in the pharmaceutical rep community. So one thing definitely does lead to another, and I think sometimes people are a little short-sighted on that. You know, the one thing I will say, what does they say? Trust but verify. I think generally
Yes.
speaking, people are not very good with math and money and finances. I like to go through my P&L every single month, and I look at a trailing 6 months, month by month. So if there's a line item that's out of whack, I can say, "Oh, this is why is this line item 50% more?
Yep.
Did somebody send me the wrong bill? Was there a one-time expense I forgot about?" I think the same thing is whether it's your bookkeeper or you look at your credit card statement and just do some quick math, envelope math, and go, "Hey, is this in the range of what I should be paying now?" Since we're getting in the processing space, we're doing flat rate pricing. That way, people always know this is what you're paying. It's very fair. You know, especially compared to what other people charge in catering. It's card not present, which is the most expensive transaction.
Yep.
You know, the guy's not coming in and hand you the card, which in catering they're not. They're just punching in it and are giving it to you over the phone. So I think it's easier to know that, yeah, maybe you're paying a few cents more, but at the end of the day, you can sleep at night knowing that this is a percentage, and you know, you're not worried about it.
Right. Yep.
Anything else that people need to know about credit card processing? Think about credit card processing. Something they might want to check. You know, is there a quick, you know, hey, I've been with the same guy. It's my brother-in-law. It's the guy from the Kiwanis Club. I trust the guy. You know, I found out an expensive lesson today. So, you know, I've got a place in Costa Rica. I'm down here, been dealing with water issues. I come in here and I got leaks in my house. I just spent all this freaking money to get a new roof, new gutters, new downspout. And I get a couple of I was going to bring my guy out. I've given him a ton of money to upgrade this house since I bought it. You think he'd take care of me. I even gave him a $5,000 motor for free as a thank you gift, Christmas present for his boat for doing my project. So you'd think he'd be like a brother-in-law and like, hey, I'm going to hook you up on the roof. Dude, take heavy duty aluminum foil and double it. And that's what he put on my roof. Like, these guys are on here and they're showing me how flimsy the roof is. And I'm like, I'm so disappointed in this guy.
Yeah.
So disappointed. Like, absolutely disappointed. So, you know, is there something people can do, check their credit card statements or something, you know, as to just to make sure everybody's being above board, kosher, and nobody's taking advantage of you?
Definitely. I mean, obviously checking your statement is going to kind of tell the story, but you know, what I would tell people is if you have a rep or someone that's supposed to be your guy, you know, that's the conversation to have with them. You know, one thing that we do in my company, and this is me and then the reps that I had that work for me, if we bring someone on and we say, hey, we looked at your statement and we're going to save you X. Well, at the end of month one, we do another cost analysis and we send it back saying, hey, based on where you were, based on where you landed with us, this is where it shook out, and we were within $6 of our quote.
Right.
And then usually at 90 days, we do it again just to kind of show them like, hey, our numbers are making sense. What we told you is holding true. Nothing's changed in your business, because things do change. Like, I mean, I've had it where I've signed up businesses that are all face to face, and then they add in a component of card not present, like restaurant,
Right.
and all of a sudden their rates go up, and they're yelling at me, and I'm like, well, guys, 60% of the business is retail now. 40% is key enter. You're going to have another 40 basis points in there. That's the way it works. I can set you up a separate account just for that. We can keep it separate, but that's how it goes. But yeah, I would say if you have a good rep that's taking care of you and you trust that person, they should be providing you that information. I mean, you know, definitely look at your statement. If you have an accountant, look at it, you know where your numbers fall. And then it's not a bad idea to take a look at your equipment, your technology, what you're using, and just make sure you're up to snuff with the latest and greatest. Technology matters. If you're using something that doesn't do EMV or doesn't do Apple Pay, you know, there's different type of card brands that'll drop rates for that. I know there's a certain processor out there. I won't name them, but you know, whenever I get a statement from one of their merchants, it's like Christmas morning for me. I see the name and I'm like, ooh, this is going to be good, because I know that they bake in all kinds of hidden fees.
Right.
Like if you don't have a device that does EMV, they'll immediately hit you with like a 1% downgrade. So and it's crazy because they provided the equipment and their equipment didn't do it. So it's shocking, but that's what they do.
Yeah.
But that's what I would say is review it every quarter, if not at least twice a year. And if you have someone that's your guy, they should be giving you that information, taking care of you.
Yeah. You know, I think it's very important. Had a conversation with a customer today about technology integration and what have you. And I basically was like, look, I've been in your shoes. I've had people tell me this point of sale system will do this and you can track food costs and whatever. And then let's read the asterisk with the small print. If you have a full-time bookkeeper to enter every single Cisco invoice, and if there's a substitution, they change the software. It's like, dude, like you're blowing smoke up my skirt. There's no way this is going to happen. And so I believe in like, and we were on the same call with this client. It's like, look, this is the good, this is the bad. I'm going to tell you what's doable. I'm not trying to sell you. I
Right.
am trying to educate you, and hopefully by me educating you to what I can do and not do, you want to choose me. But I'm not a salesperson. Like, if it's not going to do what you need it to do, I'm going to tell you. And I'm also going to tell you where the bodies are buried and what doors open, because I don't need a phone call
Yep.
in 6 months that you said it could do this, but read the small print. Like, I just don't need that headache. I
Yep.
would rather just shoot people. And I think the same thing with food, right? It's like, hey, Jason, you ordered this food, and I'm telling you, yeah, you can do it for $15 a person, but you have a bunch of your kid, you got your 16-year-old son and his friends are all a bunch of ball players, and they're going to go through more. So yes, for normal people, it'll feed them, but you probably want to add 20% more, because these kids they're gonna be beasts, right? Or if it's your grandmother's garden club, you probably don't need that much food. Granny ain't gonna eat, a half a pound of barbecue. And I've done that before. And I think what that does is sometimes when you undersell somebody, it gives you so much credibility that even if you don't get the business, they're going to refer you to somebody else, because it's like, hey, this guy wasn't out to take money from me. He was out to help me. And I'm definitely a big believer in karma, like 1,000%.
Agreed. Yeah, and I think it also plays into what is your moral compass as a business person? I mean, not all business is good business, and you got to know what to walk away from. And I'm in a good place right now where if I meet with someone and I'm not feeling the vibe check, or I don't think that they appreciate like what it is that we do, it may be someone where I'll present some options to, but like I'm not gonna like chase them and go after it hardcore. It's not worth the headache for me, because to your point, I don't want the service issue. I don't want the call that says you didn't tell me this. One of the things that I started doing probably 2.5, 3 years ago was anytime I met with a restaurant and we had that in-depth conversation about POS, we would sit down, we would take a look at what they're using today. And my number one thing is, okay, what does it do for you that you cannot live without? Like, I need to know the details. I need to know the reports, the server takeout functionality. Like, do you tip servers in bar 1% of sales? Like, I need to know all that.
Yeah.
And then my next question is, what does it not do for you, or what if it could do it, what would make your life 10 times easier? And then from there, I go to work, and then I use my levers and start figuring out, okay, I know this POS, or I'm a reseller with this POS. But before I do anything, I pin that merchant down and make them do a demo. Usually it's on Zoom or Google Meet, whatever they're using, but it's like, hey, I need you in an office, not chopping lettuce in the back. We need to sit down, because I want you to see this. I want you to see the interface, and I want you to tear it apart. Ask all your questions. I need you to think through every little nuance that pops up in your business to where we can make sure it does it. Because I will never place a POS unless they have actually seen the demo, went through it. We basically, I don't want to say signed off on it, but they blessed it to say, yep, it does what we need to do. Because to your point, years and years ago, it was always push it out the door, get them set up, and then figure it out later. And then every time they would come back and say, well, it doesn't do this. I'm like, well, what do I do now? So we don't do that here. Let's figure it out, make sure you can do what you got to do before we go forward. And then we also do a second step where we obviously do their menu build, and we do another Zoom or Google Meet to say, all right, let's look at your menu. I want to make sure all the buttons are where they need to be, your items are working, your modifiers are flowing properly, your bar drinks are moving the right way. Because what I don't want to do is I don't want to just stick it in, and then we get out there that day and all of a sudden it's 5 hours worth of menu revisions. Right? It's always about like, it's like that, my grandfather used to say, the ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. It's that type of concept, right? So now when we go on site and we install, I mean, we're 90% of the way there. I mean, as long as the internet's good, we can pretty much link in and connect to the network, and we're ready to rock within an hour. And now it's just training and some slight modifications. Maybe they don't like where the appetizer button is and we just move it, but it's very minimal at this point, where years ago it was like you're on site for 8 hours.
And just to be clear, not only can you help anybody listening with credit card processing, and we're working together, I guess indirectly, on CaterPay, which is super exciting.
Yep.
I'm not going to pre-announce some stuff we're working on, but some cool stuff. And then you can sell them point of sale systems and all sorts of other terminals and things that could help them, whether they need a mobile payment system if they're at a farmer's market, or whatever, they're doing a vending situation or whatever.
Yeah, we're that we're that full stack, full suite. I mean, there's not really a business model that we can't help with. And, that's what makes it fun for me is like, while I may have a call Monday at 8 a.m. with a restaurant, Tuesday at 2, I have a meeting with a manufacturing company that is shipping massive amounts of product to different countries. And we have to kind of solve for a system that integrates to their ERP.
Yeah.
You can do all that, and it's just depends upon what they want and how they need it to work. And then that's where I get with the product teams and developers, and we go to work. And, it's not just credit cards. Like we have systems now where we can link card, ACH all in one system, payment links. I mean, I just did one for a contractor, a building materials company last week, where they can actually just send out like an invoice with a link to a text number, and the contractor can open their phone and Apple Pay and click it, and it's done. They're paid within 20 seconds.
Where things are headed, like, I feel like I think when my parents figured out what an answering machine was, and then they went to voicemail and all this stuff, like, I rarely pull a credit card out anymore. If I can tap to pay, that's the way I'm living my life. Now, it isn't, it's probably 99% you can tap to pay. That's the best invention since sliced white bread. I hate carrying anything.
Yep.
I love
sure.
it.
I mean, that's like, my wife and I finally got her like on the Apple Pay thing maybe a year or two ago. And ever since then, like it's changed her life. Like she very rarely carries her wallet anymore. And not that it's a bad thing, but for me, it's just so simplistic, and she has the iWatch. So now when she goes out and does her run and stops at the little coffee shop, she can just tap and calls it a day. It's so much simpler. And it's a faster checkout experience too.
Yeah, it's totally nuts where everything's headed, which is a good thing. And, just as we wind this up, I'm glad you reached out to us years ago. And, if you were going to do a case study for school, the synergistic referral type of thing, it's really worked the way it should be. It wasn't, I don't feel it was one-sided. I feel like you've added so much value, and I hope that, you feel the same. Like literally one day I'm in a bar eating wings for lunch, and I'm talking to this guy who's needs payments for a software company. Have you done anything with him? Is that going anywhere?
Yeah. So him and I have talked. I got to follow back up with him. I sent him a couple emails waiting to hear back. He wanted to do like a model to see what it would look like. So just waiting on him at this point, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, I hope you make a shit ton of money off of it, because, I haven't made a shit ton from you, but I've definitely made maybe a wheelbarrow full. So that's been exciting.
That's good.
So, I appreciate it, man. It was great. Do you have a website if people want to get a hold of you?
Yeah, it's blueridgepayments.com. Super simple, super easy.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to take us out.
Thanks, man.
You've been listening to Restaurant Catering Smarts. For more insights and episodes, make sure to follow along, subscribe, and share at CaterZen.com.